Tonight, I want to talk about something that most drivers are just starting to hear about, but very few people are actually explaining. Insurance companies are starting to ask trucking companies for access to things like ELD data, telematics, and dash cam footage. Some drivers are hearing it during insurance renewals. Some carriers are installing AI dash cameras, and insurance companies are asking for safety analytics. A lot of drivers are asking the same question though. Why? Why does the insurance company suddenly want to watch how the truck is being driven? And more importantly, what does that mean for the future of trucking? Because this conversation isn't really about cameras. It's about control. It's about data. And once industries start collecting data, they rarely ever stop. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's start with the obvious part. Insurance companies aren't doing this just because they woke up one morning and decided they wanted to spy on truck drivers. They're doing it because the trucking insurance market has become extremely risky. Accidents are more expensive. Truck repairs cost more than they did 10 years ago. Medical costs are higher. Lawsuits getting bigger, much bigger. The industry has something called nuclear verdicts. Those are lawsuits where juries are awarding tens of millions of dollars after an accident involving a truck. Sometimes the driver was clearly at fault. Sometimes it's more complicated. But the reality is that when a truck is involved in a serious accident, financial exposure can be enormous. Insurance companies see that as a risk, and insurance companies hate uncertainty. Instead of guessing about risk, why don't we measure it? Instead of assuming how drivers behave, let's track it. And that's where telematics comes in. Now, telematics sounds like something complicated technology term, but it really just means collecting driving data, like a black box. Your truck is already producing information constantly: speed, brake pressure, acceleration, idle time, location, driving hours. All of that information exists already. Telematics just collects it and analyzes it. So instead of insurance companies looking at a driver's history once a year, they can now analyze how the truck is actually driven every day. How often does the truck brake hard? How often does it exceed certain speed limits? And how frequently does it accelerate aggressively? Another thing, how often does it follow too closely? From the insurance company's perspective, this information is incredibly valuable because it allows them to build something called a risk profile, which basically means an algorithm looks at driving behavior and estimates how likely a crash might be. Now, that might sound futuristic, but like I said, technology already exists. Many fleets are already using it. Geico, Allstate, they use it for regular vehicles. Dash cameras, on the other hand, are another part of the system. They just recorded them in front of the road and in front of the truck. Drivers installed them mostly to protect themselves from four-wheelers doing something stupid and blaming the truck driver. Now, dash cameras are becoming much more advanced. Some systems can detect lane departures, some monitoring following distance, some even detect hard braking events or even a collision. Some can identify when a driver appears fatigued, including driver-facing cameras for companies. But this just means that the system is not only watching the road, it might also be watching the driver. And that's where the conversation starts to get interesting, because trucking operates on a model that a lot of people outside the industry don't understand. Independent contractors, owner-operators, lease operators, drivers who own their truck but operate under a different motor carrier's authority. The whole premise of that system is independence. The driver owns the truck, controls how the work gets done. They choose how they drive. They choose how they operate. When multiple companies are monitoring that truck in real time, insurance company, motor carrier, FMCSA, the telematics provider, suddenly the question becomes a little bit more complicated. If someone is watching every move you make while you work, are you still independent, or are you just an employee who happens to own the equipment? That debate's actually been happening in trucking for years, and it's one of the reasons the independent contractor model is under constant scrutiny. Now, some drivers hear of this and they say something simple: if you're a safe driver, you've got nothing to worry about. And honestly, And there's some truth to that. Dash cameras have saved drivers from false accident claims countless times. If someone cuts off a truck and causes a crash, the video footage can prove exactly what happened. That protects drivers. But data is a double-edged sword because once information exists, it can be used in more than one way. Data can protect you, but it can also be used against you. Think about how accident investigations used to work. Police reports, witness statements, vehicle damage, maybe skid marks on the road. That was about it. Now imagine accident investigations today. Investigators might have the truck speed in seconds before the impact. They may have braking pressure data. They might have camera footage from multiple angles. And they may have GPS tracking showing exactly where the truck traveled all day. They might have hours of service data, maybe even driver behavior alerts from telematics systems. And in some cases, this creates a clearer picture of what possibly happened. But it also means every second leading up to the accident gets examined and scrutinized deeply. Every mile, every decision, every action. And that changes the way liability gets assigned. Now, here's another possibility that some people in the insurance industry are already talking about. Behavior-based insurance. Instead of charging premiums mostly based on the truck or company history, insurance companies may eventually price policies based on driver behavior data, which means two drivers with identical trucks could have two very different insurance costs. One driver might be considered a low risk. Another driver might be flagged by the system as aggressive or unpredictable. We've met those people. Again, that technology already exists, it's just not universal yet. And that leads to the bigger question. Where does the industry draw that line? Technology will continue improving, data collection will continue expanding, but at some point drivers start asking whether safety technology becomes excessive monitoring. And at what point does tracking become surveillance? And how much control are drivers willing to give up in exchange for a lower insurance risk? Because trucking has always been a strange balance between freedom and regulation. You're out on the road alone, hundreds of miles from anyone else, but you're also operating inside one of the most regulated industries in the country. And technology is adding another layer to that system. ELDs, telematics, dash cameras, insurance analytics. The road itself hasn't changed, but the amount of information being collected about the people driving in it definitely has. And in the next few years, we'll probably determine just how far that trend goes. So I'm curious, what drivers are actually seeing out there? Have you been required to install a dash cam recently, or at least in the last few years? Has your carrier mentioned telematics data during insurance renewal? Are insurance companies starting to ask more questions about driving behavior? Let me know in the comments. Because this is one of those changes in industry that might be happening quietly right now. But it could reshape trucking in many ways most people haven't even thought about yet.